real quick, if you have not seen part 1 of this rewrite, go watch that now. Link will be up here in the cards and also down in the description, please and thank you. Anyways, for those joining us again, allow me to quickly recap where we left off. So the Winx have just destroyed the Ancestral Witches for realsies this time, and have also finally achieved Cyrenix, including Roxy. Yes, we're making her the 7th Winx. Tritanus is, as far as anyone knows, still adrift in the Infinite Ocean following the Trix's betrayal, but the Trix themselves are at a loss for their next step, even as they still possess Dark Cyrenix. Politeia, meanwhile, remember her, has been freed from her water dragon form, but is still a vengeful spirit, and she's about to take advantage of everyone's confusion and the recent feeling of triumph with the defeat of the Ancestral Witches. But before we actually begin, I want to list some amendments I have made to the first half of this season since last time. It's been a hot minute. Now, this one is not really a change, but rather a confirmation I apparently did not make clear enough. Harmonix has been completely removed. The only purpose for its existence originally was to have 2 transformations for more merchandising opportunities. The Winx have shown their ability to use their powers underwater before, and movement underwater isn't enough of a reason to have 2 entirely separate aquatic transformations, especially when one of them is so short-lived. That said, because of how I've set up the spells, the Winx have access to any and all spells from previous forms, meaning the Harmonix spells shall live on with Cyrenix, and well past it into future seasons. In addition, the Harmonix designs will be used for Cyrenix, namely because the Cyrenix designs are hideous and far too uniform for my liking. Someone on Twitter actually recently made some fan art of a Cyrenix Harmonix fusion. It's gorgeous. My only suggestion would be to keep the Harmonix hair because the Harmonix hair is iconic, but other than that, good job! I shall list you right here. Everyone go support them. Yes. Now, as for actual story changes, we will start with one small one I kind of forgot about. Do you remember Hagen from the first movie? Cool blacksmith guy who forged Ortel's sword and nearly murdered the shit out of Bloom when she broke into his home. Yeah, I kind of forgot about him too. Considering he's still technically part of the Company of Light, we're going to be including him on the mission to Avram. As for whether he's still dating Farragonda, look, I don't know, but I just wanted to include this little amendment because who wouldn't want to see an Ortel Hagen team up? Maybe Hagen inspire some character development in Ortel. That would be nice to see. And now, the big thing. The Nabu situation. Now, we all know in canon he's dead. Morgana's line of,
"Until he wakes up again, you have my word,"
kind of made it unclear for a bit, albeit most people kind of figured he was indeed dead, and OG Season 5 confirmed that. However, my friend Cinzy, hi Cinzy, recently got into the show, and they were not a big fan of Season 4's execution, especially Nabu's death. Specifically, they pointed out that Nabu being the only major male black character who dies is, not good, and I'm kind of embarrassed that it took me that long to acknowledge that. And the fact that Aisha seems to suffer more than the other girls is just, ugh. As such, after much talk on what to do about this, we decided to amend Nabu's fate and change it to him being in a coma, where no one is sure whether he will awaken, but he is still technically alive. Think of it as a magical life support. The flower does not hold his essence, and instead his body is currently resting on Tir Nanog under Nebula's care. We still have the memorial to honor his actions, the flower is still symbolism for his life, but again, he's not dead. This will be important for later, and don't you worry, I will be sure to maintain the darker tone in the stakes. If my friends can vouch for anything, it's that I do not shy away from tormenting and killing characters I write for. Oh god. Is there like a writer equivalent for like CPS? And now let us dive right into this rewrite of Winx Club Season 5. Kill me. We begin at Lake Roccaluce, where the Winx, yes, including Roxy, fight me, are taking their new Cyrenix powers for a test run. They're still getting a feel for their vastly improved mobility underwater, along with discovering new spells. WizGiz has created a monster made out of pollution to help prepare them for what kind of forces Tritanus might have access to. In the midst of the fight, Stella tries to swim faster to dodge an attack, and her legs wind up turning into a mermaid tail that releases a kinetic attack, and it kind of freaks her the hell out. Obviously, there is a lot to the Cyrenix powers that the Winx still have to discover, hence why Tecna is continuing to analyze the Book of Fairies for as much information as she can find. This leads to the discovery that every Cyrenix fairy has access not only to a reality-altering wish once they have pleased destiny, but also unique, powerful spells harnessing their true Cyrenix powers. No one knows what the hell any of this means, but they assume it will just come to them naturally in the moment. But with the Ancestral Witches finally defeated and Tritanus presumably on the run, the Winx decide to take some time to celebrate their victory. Later that night, there will be a celebration in Magic City for the witch's demise, and Prince Sky, feeling much stronger, albeit still suffering from his amnesia, will be attending as well. Still, Bloom is worried given Sky is still in mourning over his father Arendor's death, while his mother Queen Samara has kept Heraklion in order, but at the very least, she is happy to see Sky is in better shape. The Tricks, meanwhile, still possessing their dark Cyrenix powers, but without proper guidance, have retreated into the ruins of Shadowhaunt. Their only real course of action would be to try and approach Tritanus and repair their alliance, but after the betrayal, the Tricks, especially Icy, are unsure if he would hear them out, without trying to kill them on the spot. Of course, that is when a mysterious voice comes out of nowhere, suggesting an offer they won't be able to refuse. A strange mist appears, and from it emerges a ghostly woman in strange attire, looking almost like some sort of demon. Stormy automatically tries to attack because that's just who Stormy is, kill everything, only for her spell to go right through the Spectre, to which Icy and Darcy tell her to stand down. The Spectre introduces herself as Politea, once one of the 9 nymphs who was cursed by both Cyrenix and the Ancestral Witches. However, thanks to the witch's demise, she has been released from her water dragon form, able to communicate once again, but the Cyrenix curse still renders her a ghost, left to wander for eternity. Politea proposes that the Tricks simply play the victims, manipulated by their ancestresses to turn on Tritanus. That way, they'll have a chance at manipulating him and his forces, allowing them a chance at the great power hidden in the infinite ocean. Darcy likes the idea, but Stormy is a bit hesitant. Icy, meanwhile, relents that she was hoping to use the Cyrenix wish, but given Dark Cyrenix has no such wish, and even then it would have come with a terrible price, Icy decides to go along with the idea, especially if it means making amends with Tritanus, who she does feel guilty about betraying. Note, I know a lot of people aren't happy to see Tracy is still here. I thought it would be interesting to explore their more human sides, where they actually do have a toxic relationship, where they do see a chance at happiness and a better life, but their lusts for power really just destroy everything in sight. A lot of the romance will have to come in smaller moments from scene to scene that aren't going to be present in the overall structure that I'm just going through broadly, so you'll have to trust me that I will find a way to make this cute if I ever decide to write scripts for this, which I won't, because no. I mean, maybe one day if, Anyway, back to the outline of my fanfiction. Later that night, the party is on in Magic City. Musa and Riven are setting up for their concert, while Flora is hanging out with Helia. Tecna, Timmy, and Aisha, meanwhile, are all still combing through the Book of Fairies, unable to help themselves and honestly finding the book's contents more engaging than the party around them. Nerds! Roy tries to get Aisha to take a break, but winds up crossing the line, making Aisha snap that Tritanus is still at large and holding her relatives hostage as monsters. Cue awkward tension, because Roy has the emotional intelligence of a fucking brick. Roxy and Stella are keeping Bloom company as they wait for Sky and Brandon. Once they arrive, Bloom and Sky go off for a talk, while Stella and Brandon go to grab some food, because Stella could always eat. Roxy, of course, feels awkward given she's on her own, and she admits that spending the whole night helping with the Book of Fairies research suddenly does not seem so bad. Although low-key, she does wish she was of drinking age to get through this. I mention this because the show has low-key had alcohol before. Look at this season 1 party. Those professors are shit-faced. And look at these two in the nightclub. Great role models. The inner Musa and Aisha shiver in me is just living for this. Sonic Wave for life! Their ship name is Sonic Wave, by the way. Get it started. Part of this celebration's purpose is to honor Arendor as having lost his life to defeat the Ancestral Witches, so this serves as a sort of public memorial as well. Sky isn't quite sure how he feels. He's sad that Arendor has perished, but feels guilty for not being an emotional wreck like everyone else. all because he can't remember their full relationship. At the very least, the demise of the ancestral witches has released the dark magic from Sky's mind. He is now able to form new memories and hold on to them, but all of his memories from before the spill are still gone, and there's likely no getting them back, ever. And that all said, Sky appreciates how Bloom has tried to be there for him despite everything that's happened, and decides to try and give their relationship a second chance, to put it. Though it isn't as much a second chance, given Sky's basically a new person at this point, so much as a chance to start fresh. Bloom is happy and agrees to take things slow, but is content that they have 3 memories together thus far. Of being there for each other on Domino, of defeating the ancestral witches together in Avram, and the third one...
And what's the third?
This.
Oh, these dorks. Of course, Venomia is here to ruin the moment, because that's her whole career, trying to spin some kind of story to ruin the night for Bloom, and even getting in Sky's face about his father's death and how he feels about this celebration. Bloom gets pissed and tells Venomia off, which seems to strike a nerve. Venomia says that Bloom has always been arrogant, making everything about her, and that it's only a matter of time until she gets a wake-up call. Bloom is very unnerved, understandably, but before she can say anything else, Venomia vanishes into the crowd. Mysterious. Enigmatic. Out of context clip that Venomia will plaster across the magical universe to make Bloom look like a shithead. Oh, you absolutely know Bloom is gonna go viral all over social media and everyone's gonna hate her. Drama! In the Infinite Ocean, meanwhile, the Tricks follow Politeia into the dark depths towards the Emperor's throne. The witches are starting to get cold feet, but Politeia asserts that this will be necessary for their ultimate goal. An ultimate goal which the Tricks are still not really sure what the fuck that is. But again, it's the Tricks. When do they ever think anything through? I don't brew the tea, I just serve it. As they approach the throne, Politeia vanishes inexplicably, because that seems to be a recurring theme, and the Tricks find themselves surrounded not only by an army of mutants, plus the Kraken and other creatures Tritanus has already turned, but most terrifyingly, creatures unique to the Infinite Ocean, all with a red glow in their eyes. I'm being vague here because that would be better left to if this was ever animated, which never will happen, but you know. But, you know horrifying deep sea creatures and how they look like aliens that will eat your face? Think that, but with a fantastical twist. The ocean is scary as fuck. Tritanus' army is even larger and more intimidating than ever before. Though he's still unable to activate the Emperor's throne, it is clear that Tritanus still has great ambitions, and he has been formulating his next steps, as well as plotting how he would get revenge on the Tricks for turning on him. Icy tries to appeal to him, saying the ancestral witches forced them to turn on him and even possess them, but it isn't until Darcy mentions their dark Cyrenix powers are still needed to help Tritanus achieve his goal that Tritanus actually hears them out. After all, she holds the power of shadows, and what better to obscure the Pillar of Light and take its seal? Ooh, she knows things! This is something we explore both with Tritanus as well as Tecna as she reads about the Infinite Ocean in the Book of Fairies. Because the magical universe was created by the Great Dragon and the Infinite Ocean by the Leviathan, they are parallel to each other. As a symbol of these entities' truce, 3 pillars were created to ensure that if one creature's realm were to fall, so would the others. You cannot destroy your enemy without destroying yourself, basically. Symbolism! First, there's the Pillar of Light, which, as the name suggests, magically supports all stars in both universes. Then there's the Pillar of Balance, which ensures both realms remain stable and don't fall the fuck apart. And finally, the Pillar of Control, which is tied directly to technomagic. Each pillar is powered by a seal, and to activate the Emperor's throne, all 3 seals must be placed within the throne's legs. And so out of necessity, Tritanus agrees to their alliance, but warns the Tricks that he will be keeping a close eye on them, and if they betray him again, he will not hesitate to cut them down. It's clear he's become far more aggressive since last time, and being completely isolated in the Infinite Ocean has really fucked up his mind, along with how the mutation has been affecting him slowly over time. And though Darcy and Stormy are keen to play along, Icy can't help but regret her past actions. Not that she'll ever admit it, no. The Tricks never admit when they make a mistake. They know when they fucked up, but they will never admit it. So while Musa performs Fly Together in the City and all the couples, including Bloom and Sky, dance, Tritanus, his army, and the Tricks lay siege to the Pillar of Light. A platoon of Selkies are standing guard, and they put up a decent fight, but but most unfortunately fall victim to Tyrant mutations. Seizing the opportunity, Darcy channels the full power of Dark Cyrenix to cast Shadow of Cyrenix, which creates a massive shadow that covers and corrupts the Pillar of Light, weakening it enough to destabilize it, allowing Tyrant to take its seal once it fully fades. The effects are felt immediately throughout the magical universe, as every star begins to be eclipsed by darkness, casting all of the worlds into shadow and throwing everyone into a little bit of a panic. Even in Magic City, when the moon is eclipsed, everyone is unnerved. Bloom feels a strange dread, given her dragon flame gives her a sort of connection to the pillars, but it's Stella who nearly faints as she's suddenly dazed. She grows pale, and her powers are weakening, and she immediately knows something is wrong before Tecna can even fill them in on her assumption. They quickly realize what's happened, but Stella is more terrified for her father. We cut to Celeria, where Stella's mother Luna rushes into the Celerian royal palace, and she finds Radius in the steeple of the sun, and he is very unhappy to see her. This is pretty much the same scene from the original Pillar of Light episode, because that episode actually did a really good job at everything, where Radius is staying close to the second son of Celeria, which is holding up for now. He dismisses Luna's concern and tells her to leave before he collapses, and Luna calls for help. Oh, it's not looking good. Stella arrives on Celeria, where she's met by her mother, who breaks the news about her father's collapse. The second son of Celeria is fading and time is running out. The Winx, meanwhile, leave the specialist to help calm the people in Magic City while they go to deal with Tyrant. Transforming into Cyrenix, they enter the Infinite Ocean, where they're greeted by the Keepers. You know, the little Selkies. Their suspicions are confirmed. Tyrant and the Tricks have attacked the Pillar of Light, and if they don't act soon, darkness will fully engulf the magical universe. Tyrant, meanwhile, is trying to remove the Pillar's seal, but it's taking longer than he hoped for the Pillar to give out and free its seal. The Winx arrive, and it is fighting time! Meaning time to show off some new Cyrenix spells. Oh, and remember that mermaid tail ability I mentioned? Well, the Winx try it out during the fight, and find out that they can use it to unleash quick kinetic attacks. Think the kick spells, except nameless, because does a kinetic attack really need a name? Radius, meanwhile, is comatose as his doctor and healers tend to him. It's here we learn that every Celerian monarch takes a pledge to bind their life with the second son, ensuring that they will do whatever they can to protect the kingdom's light. If that light is not restored quickly, Radius will die, and this breaks Stella. But as she cries, she starts to get pissed about how much Tyrant is taken from her friends, and now threatens to take her father, and she's not having any of it. Her mother gives her the advice to draw strength from her emotions rather than to suppress them as her father would often advise. And so, determined to use her powers to stop Tyrant, Stella has a solo Cyrenix transformation and arrives at the Pillar of Light to join the fight. Tyrant, having now seized the seal, escapes with the Tricks. Stella's ready to go after him, but the Keepers say that the pillar needs light to stand. Stella is forced to stay, but Bloom and Aisha quickly take off after Tyrant themselves. Bloom and Aisha manage to catch up to Tyrant, but rather than fight himself or have the Tricks do his work, he sicks the mutated Ligeia, Neptune, and Nereus on them. The girls put up a decent fight, but are wary of their actions given that they don't want to hurt them. Bloom manages to buy enough time for Aisha to use her fairy dust and Believix therapeutic powers, freeing Neptune and Nereus, but Ligeia manages to escape before she can be healed. The pillar, meanwhile, is about to give. Flora suggests that they use convergence magic to stabilize it, but Tecna says that the only thing that can hold it together is its seal. The seal provided an eternal source of light, and without it, Darcy's magic is destroying the pillar's base. Stella gets an idea and rushes to where the seal once was. She attempts to use her sun magic to restore the pillar's strength, but as shadows surround her, she's given dark visions. These visions specifically point to her memories of her parents' relationship corroding over the years, with fights or neglect, and her bearing witness to all of it until her mother left. The darkness completely seizes Stella, and the others' voices can no longer reach her. But then Stella recalls Luna's words about embracing her emotions, and her lunar magic sparks, freeing her. Flying up, Stella channels all of her power, and listening to her intuition and vowing to do this for both of her parents and for herself, uses the light of Cyrenix. Both her solar and lunar powers surround the pillar, eliminating the darkness and restoring the light. the Pillar of Light stabilizes, and we see light return to the worlds of the magical universe. The second Sun of Celeria reignites, Radius awakens to see the sunlight, and Luna simply smiles and sheds a tear, saying that she's proud of Stella. Tecna does a quick scan, finding that Stella's powers have created a new seal, this one representing the sun, moon, and all the stars. While the day is saved, however, Tritanus and the Trix return to the Emperor's throne victorious. Tritanus inserts the original seal into one of the throne's legs, and he only needs the other two seals to achieve his goal. And all the while, Politea watches from the shadows, subtly reminding the Trix of her presence, and Icy is torn. The Winx arrive on Celeria, where they're met by Sky and Brandon, who wanted to make sure the girls were okay. Brandon says he's proud of Stella, but Stella is terrified to see her parents, given that without any kind of crisis to keep them civil, they'll probably be at each other's throats once again. Stella decides to go inside alone and confront the situation. At first it seems to go well, with Luna hugging Stella and congratulating her, and Radius giving his approval. However, Radius is quick to move on to formulate a plan to stop Tritanus, upsetting Stella. Luna speaks up for her, much to Stella's dismay, and so starts a fierce argument. Radius tells Luna to leave, but Stella speaks up and tells them both to stop. The entire magical universe is at stake, and like it or not, she saved them all by thinking of both of them. So, in her words, the least that they could do is take her into consideration and not be so vehement towards each other, especially Radius. Radius is unsure of what to say and simply retires to his room to rest. The other Winx, Sky, and Brandon head inside and all hug Stella. Stella, however, has an idea that they attempt another summit of the kingdoms. With darkness covering all the universe, it's clear that most, if not all the worlds, will be more likely to form an alliance this time around. Luna commends the idea, and Bloom, Sky, and Aisha decide to head home to pitch the idea to their parents. It is time that the worlds of the magical universe finally unite. Stella, meanwhile, decides to spend the rest of the day with Brandon to recharge, because in her words, she's had enough of the melodrama for one day. The summit begins at Light Rock Monastery, a neutral ground that serves as the cornerstone of the magical universe. Literally every kingdom's monarchs, along with their advisors, princes, and princesses, are here to discuss what to do about Tritanus. Bloom, Sky, Stella, and Aisha are here, of course, given their royalty. Brandon is also here accompanying Sky. Queen Nebula of Earth is present, though Roxy is with the other Winx right now. More on that later. But much to Stella's dismay, her mother Luna is not present, given she is no longer royalty. Also present is Tecna, as though she isn't a princess, her parents, Electronio and Magnethia, are high-ranking advisors and scientists working under King Cryos of Zenith. She's positive her parents will understand the logic of uniting against a common enemy, though, she's in for an unpleasant surprise later. A surprise which immediately seems kinda obvious to the other Winx when they see how cold and dismissive Tecna's parents are. Not only to them as fellow royalty, but also to their own daughter. The other Winx, meanwhile, are standing guard around the Pillar of Balance in the Infinite Ocean. This pillar is constructed of a central tower of green glass, surrounded by smaller towers. The pillar stands on a plateau, around which appears to be an undersea forest made of coral. The Keepers insist that this will be Tritanus' next target, given its close proximity to the Pillar of Light, and that the Pillar of Control has the most natural defenses around it. Roxy insisted on defending the pillar, as having only two Winx here did not bode well for her, and she's always more excited to be on the front lines. They hear a call out in the distance and see a shape taking form. Roxy's of course thinking it's Tritanus, but Flora stops her. Quickly, Roxy realizes it's a sort of whale call, and Musa says that she's heard this before. The singing whales reveal themselves, and Musa shares that these whales are considered a legend on Melody, seldom appearing in the sea and singing their song to those nearby. Her mother always talked about wanting to see the whales, but she never got the chance. Flora summons the Book of Fairies and finds that the singing whales serve as the guardians of the Pillar of Balance, their powers allowing them to enter and leave the infinite ocean as they please. So long as their song remains, the Pillar of Balance will be protected from any and all attacks. Foreshadowing! At the Emperor's throne, meanwhile, Icy is meeting with Politea. Politea sees that Icy isn't as resolved in manipulating Tritanus as her sisters, and reminds her that this is the only chance Icy has at fulfilling her true wish. Icy plays dumb, saying that she can simply share the power of the throne with Tritanus, but Palatea simply laughs. She states that power can never be truly shared, only further consolidated, but that's not even what she meant. Icy's clearly unnerved, but Tritanus calls out to her. Palatea vanishes, but while the tricks follow Tritanus to the Pillar of Balance, Palatea manifests again, watching from afar. She simply says that she knows very well what the wish of Diamond's last cursed princess would be, and she takes amusement in how deluded she believes Icy to be. The summit, meanwhile, is not going the way everybody was hoping, because of course it isn't. The kingdoms for the Alliance are Andros, Domino, and Earth, of course, along with Linfea, Melody, Delona, and Romulea. The other kingdoms, however, are against an alliance. Downland, yes, Amentia and Sponsus are here, and I will take full advantage, as well as Callisto, Espero, Ohm, Oppositus, Wisperia, and most surprisingly, Heraklion, Celeria, and Zenith. Callisto's just very gung-ho about doing shit by itself, given it's a planet of storms, meaning everyone there is rough and tumble. Downland just doesn't really see how any of this affects them, given they're in the Underrealm, but they do have access to several underground rivers and springs. Espero and Ohm as peaceful planets just don't want to get involved whatsoever, and Wisperia as a planet of dark magic are rather cynical and pessimistic about everyone's agenda. Everyone was certain, though, that Celeria and Heraklion would join the Alliance, but instead, Queen Samara doesn't want to further burden Heraklion after it's just lost its king, low-key blaming Oratel, Miriam, and Bloom for what happened, and Sky is hesitant to speak up. Radius, meanwhile, is trying to protect his pride as a fierce ruler, and especially given he nearly died, he wants to stop Tritanus himself and have Stella be his champion, but Stella ain't having any of it. Tecna's parents coldly say that it would be best for Zenith to defend itself with its techno magic, allowing the other kingdoms to handle the matter themselves, and Cryos just goes along with it. Tecna is pissed, but when her parents say that she's being irrational and listening to her emotions far too much, she just shuts down completely. During a break, Bloom and Aisha's families speak with Stella and Tecna about what's happened. They're not sure they can fully support the Winx without all of the worlds united. With this, one of the top goals becomes diminishing Tritanus forces. The Winx's therapeutic powers work well, but can only work on one mutant at a time. Neptune, however, reveals that Ligeia's coral gem has the power to undo the effects of wild magic. It was said to have once been part of the Breath of the Ocean, a stone hidden in the Infinite Ocean that might be able to completely free Tritanus' army, and even purge him of his dark powers once and for all. The gem was destroyed when the city of Tritons fell, but the Winx decide to try and find the Breath of the Ocean sooner rather than later. And speaking of Tritanus, he launches a surprise attack on the Pillar of Balance, shocking no one. The Winx defend against the Trix and the mutant army, managing to keep a decent pace. Musa takes notice, however, that there is no sign of Tritanus, nor the singing whales. She immediately gets a bad feeling, which is confirmed as she hears the whales crying. She rushes to stop Tritanus, but she's too late. The whales have been mutated and are now under Tritanus' control. The whale's song, likewise, is corrupted and shatters the Pillar of Balance. The worlds of the magical universe slowly start to shake, but the quakes quickly become more powerful tremors, felt even at Light Rock. With the entire magical universe falling to massive earthquakes, the Sovereigns currently at Light Rock rush back to their homeworlds to protect them directly. Tecna tries to get a word in with her parents, but they just follow Cryos back to Zenith before she can say anything. With this, she resigns and decides to follow Bloom, Stella, and Aisha into the Infinite Ocean to stop Tritanus, and Neptune, Nereus, and Tressa decide to aid them. Roy accompanies them too, since he's technically still Aisha's bodyguard. Aisha protests, but Terrador insists, and Aisha just resists the urge to choke a bitch. In the Infinite Ocean, meanwhile, the Pillar of Balance has completely shattered, leaving its seal floating in the midst of its glassy remains. Roxy and Flora are basically playing a game of keep away from the Trix and Tritanus mutants. Musa is busy dealing with the corrupted singing whales, and when Flora gets an idea, she tells Roxy to go help Musa while she protects the seal. Tritanus and the Trix are quick to mock Flora as the weakest of the Winx, and they're certain this will be easy for them. But rest assured, Flora's not holding back, and she uses her full power to push back Tritanus' army, then create a massive fortress of coral around herself that fends off him and his mutants. She knows she can't hold out forever, but she's not trying to. Roxy manages to help soothe the singing whales a bit with her powers, giving Musa enough time to use her fairy dust and therapeutic powers. They don't work, however, as Musa's too distraught to be able to use them effectively. With Roxy's encouragement, however, Musa is able to try again, and together the two free the whales from Tritanus' control, but are left exhausted. Flora's barrier, meanwhile, has been completely destroyed, but she still manages to hold her own, buying enough time until the other Winx, along with Aisha's family and Roy, arrive to help. Flora tries to flee with the seal, only for a strange humanoid specter to blind her temporarily, then take the seal, delivering it into Icy's hands. Content with his victory, Tritanus retreats, the magical universe still trembling without the pillar of balance to keep it stable. Roy tries to go after him, and Aisha winds up having to bail him out of nearly getting shish kebabbed. Musa and Roxy arrive with the singing whales. The whales perform their song, attempting to reassemble the pillar, but it's not enough and continues to crumble. Musa looks on in horror, losing all hope. The whale's song, however, somewhat comforts her, making her think of her mother, and it's here she uses her special spell, the Requiem of Cyrenix. Singing Return to Me, Musa leads the whales in their song, and the sound waves construct an entirely new pillar of balance. The melody echoes through the worlds of the magical universe, allowing everyone to hear Musa's song and feel her emotions. There's even a little bit where we see what looks like a wisp in the shape of Wanine behind Musa, holding her shoulder as she sings. Once the song is complete, a new iridescent pillar of balance, shining all the colors of the rainbow, stands tall, and the magical universe is stabilized. The Winx return to Lightrock Monastery, where they find that many of the kingdoms that were initially against the Alliance, including Celeria and Heraklion, are now on board, unnerved by the crisis and moved by Musa's song. Sky also brought Riven with him, so we can get a cute Musa and Riven moment where Riven says how proud he is of her. With this, the kingdoms decide to soon meet on Andros to discuss their next steps to aid against Tritanus. At the Emperor's throne, meanwhile, Tritanus inserts the Seal of Balance into one of the throne's legs. He only has one seal left before his goal is complete, and he's ready to head out now, only for a sudden blast from the throne to devastate him. He's left exhausted, having to take time to recover before heading on the long, arduous journey to the Pillar of Control. It's clear, however, that Politeia is somehow behind this. When Icy confronts her, Politeia is quick to argue back about being questioned. Before they can continue, Politeia needs a magical artifact to ensure that they can take the throne's power before Tritanus has a chance to. An enchanted pearl called the Eye of Inspiration. Resuming where we left off, Politeia explains to the Trix that the Eye of Inspiration is vital if they want to find a way to seize the power of the throne and free themselves from Tritanus. This artifact is a sacred pearl that allows the user to receive glimpses of fated events, essentially allowing them to alter their actions accordingly, in hopes to either reach that future or to change their destiny. The pearl's location, however, is only known by Omnia, guardian of the infinite ocean. And not only do they need to find a way to force that information out of her, but they also need to keep this mission a secret from Tritanus. On Andros, meanwhile, another Sovereign's Council is held, this time attended by all the worlds of the magical universe. Musa's actions at the Pillar of Balance, as well as her heartfelt song, inspired the rulers to at least attempt to work together to stop Tritanus. And this time, all the Winx are present. Oh, and Roy's here too, also. And he tries to make it clear to Aisha that he's gonna continue trying to defend her, and everyone just kind of rolls their eyes. Of course, the Trix take advantage of this to suggest that Tritanus attack the meeting and destroy them all at once. He likes the idea and decides to summon one of the most powerful and dangerous creatures of the infinite ocean, a Devourer of the Abyss. Now, just for the record, Tritanus here already has a huge army of horrifying sea mutants. The original Devourers are now called Ravagers. Why, you ask? So that the beast of the depths here can be called the Devourer, cause the name Devourer just sounds cooler. And this whale-looking motherfucker is just not frightening enough to get its own episode, in my opinion. Anyways, new Devourer of the Abyss here is sent with the Trix, along with a lot of Tritanus' army, to Andros to, kill everyone at the council. The Tricks, however, sneak away during this so that they can join Politeia in going after Omnia. Icy isn't sure about this, but Politeia subtly threatens to reveal Icy's backstory to Tritanus and her true intentions if she doesn't go along with Politeia's scheme, referring to the long-lost princess who fell Diamond. The kingdoms, meanwhile, are doing a better job at having common sense and learning to work the fuck together. Take a note, real world of 2020. Sky is even able to convince Samara to let Heraklion join the Alliance, and same for Stella convincing Radius. Zenith, however, is the only major kingdom to refuse the offer, saying that it's only logical they continue to defend themselves. This is a big problem, not only because it stresses Tecna the fuck out, but also because the other kingdoms need Zenith's advanced techno-magic to stand against Tritanus, and Zenith abstaining inspires a few other worlds to stay out of the Alliance as well. Magnethia, Tecna's mother, pulls Tecna off to the side, chastising her for her irrationality. Tecna retorts that it's that irrationality that allowed her to save Andros from the Omega portal when it went out of control. To which Magnethia has an outburst along the lines of, "Why do you think your father and I loathe that part of you so much?" It's tense and quiet for a bit, after which Magnethia coldly says that they've never forgiven Tecna for throwing herself in harm's way and nearly dying, and they refuse to come to the aid of another world if it means risking losing her again. But if Tecna is willing to go that far, Magnethia simply says that maybe it's best they cut ties. And right as the drama hits its limit, and before Tecna can start crying along with the audience, the Devourer and other monsters arrive and launch their attack, overseen by Tritanus from afar. It's a complete shit show, with the Winx splitting up to handle the monsters as well as defend the Sovereigns. Tritanus does notice the Tricks aren't present, and he's a bit concerned, but he assures himself that the Tricks are simply holding back for some kind of surprise attack. Unfortunately for him, the Tricks are actually still in the Infinite Ocean, and have arrived with Politeia at Omnia's domain. The Selkies are here, resting given that they're still weakened from Tritanus taking their powers. When Politeia reveals herself, Omnia seems to immediately recognize her as a dark spirit that belongs in Oblivion, corrupted by the Cyrenix curse. Omnia puts up a real good fight, but the Tricks hold the Selkies hostage, forcing Omnia to reveal the location of the Eye of Inspiration. She concedes, and Politeia and the Tricks escape before Omnia can capture them. Back on Andros, the Winx are starting to turn the tides, especially when reinforcements from Domino, Celeria, and Heraklion arrive on the orders of their planet's respective leaders. Roy manages to hold his own, and he and Aisha actually fight decently well together, but of course when Roy tries to go to Aisha's defense, he winds up making things worse for them both, with Aisha having to bail them out. The Devourer refuses to back down, but Flora and Roxy use Convergence to soothe the beast, connecting with it and liberating it from Tritanus' control. Tritanus calls back the rest of his army, but the Devourer is simply returned to its home in the Infinite Ocean steppes. Once the chaos subsides, Omnia contacts the Winx via the Book of Fairies, saying that there's an emergency in the Infinite Ocean. And right after this, we see Politeia and the Tricks arriving at the Forbidden Coral Barrier, preparing to enter and find the Pearl. The Winx arrive at Omnia's domain, where they find the nymph tending to the frightened Selkies. Omnia fills the Winx in on the Tricks' plan to go after the Eye of Inspiration, but seems reluctant to divulge any more information. She simply says there is a dark spirit alongside them, one who fell victim to the Cyrenix curse and will stop at nothing to restore her form. When the Winx ask about the Eye, though, Omnia shares the tale of the Fates, 3 sisters who dwelled in the Forbidden Coral Barrier near the abyss of the Infinite Ocean. These sisters share only one eye, which is able to foretell destined events. If someone were to take the eye from the Fates, they might be able to change their destiny, at least if they're clever enough to outwit the eye, because the eye can be a little bitch. That's not her exact words, but I mean, maybe they could be, just to scare the parents, but This transitions us to the Coral Barrier as the Tricks and Politeia arrive. The Tricks, especially Icy, are unnerved by this foreboding place, but Politeia asserts that this is the only way to achieve their goal. Once they enter, the Winx arrive shortly, guided by the Selkies. The Selkies return to Omnia while Tecna analyzes the area before they head inside. Flora notes that for a place called the Coral Barrier, the coral here is actually dead and has been for a very long time, while Roxy picks up on the presence of several dead fish who were killed once they approach the reef. Musa, meanwhile, senses that this place is rife with discord, enough to give her a small migraine. Upon reaching the central chamber, the Trix and Politeia encounter the Fates, who are currently in a heated debate about the fate of the universe as a whole. You know, the casual stuff. The Fates tell their guests that they will be able to receive the eye if they can each answer a question about themselves honestly. Stormy jokes about drawing straws to see who'll go first, but winds up accepting her sisters or having her go up first because, 1, she's the youngest, and 2, she's honestly just the most straightforward. Stormy just likes blowing shit up. The Fates ask Stormy who she loves the most, and she's at first flustered by the question. After some prodding from her sisters and mild threatening by Politeia, Stormy answers that she would do anything for both of her sisters, and the Fates deem her answer honest. Cue a surprisingly heartwarming moment for the Trix and some teasing, and Stormy blushing because we need some wholesome moments and some characterization for these 3 idiots. Darcy goes next, and the Fates sense that she still has some residual feelings from someone she's claimed not to care about for a very long time. They ask for his name, and reluctantly, Darcy says Riven. She has dug this shit down for years, but part of her still wonders if Riven would have gone along with their original scheme back in season 1 had they not immediately turned on him when he wore out his usefulness. Icy is expected to go up next, but she is reluctant. Frustrated, Politeia takes the next question for herself. Who do you hate the most? Her answer? Daphne the nymph. And she gets very scary when she says this, amusing the Fates. Finally, Icy's up to the plate, and the Fates sense much conflict within her heart. They ask her what her vision of true happiness would be, and trying to appease Politeia and her sisters, Icy answers as being the most powerful witch in the magical universe, ruling the worlds with an iron fist. But that is a lie. The Fates refuse to hand over the eye, and this royally pisses off Politeia. The Winx arrive just in time, and are horrified by their first glimpse of the former nymph. Bloom specifically is unnerved when Icy refers to her as Politeia, and Politeia makes it clear that she knows Bloom's sister is Daphne while targeting her specifically. After much chaos, the Trix manage to steal the eye, and the Fates in retaliation set up a trap to kill everyone present. The Trix and Politeia escape, of course, forcing the Winx to rely on their wits and combined powers to find a way out. This is, of course, a la the escape methods from Mystery of the Abyss, aka the only part of that movie that is worth watching. That is the real tea. Though as they leave, the Fates give Bloom an ominous warning that she can't save everyone she cares about. To save the universe as a whole and fulfill her destiny, she will have to sacrifice the thing she loves the most. And before she can even process this, Stella grabs her and the Winx piece the fuck out. Now Politeia has the eye, disappearing as the Trix return to the Emperor's throne. Tritanus demands to know where they were. Politeia, invisible, whispers into their ears, and accordingly, the Trix say that they battled the nymph Omnia to learn the secrets of the final pillar of the Infinite Ocean, the Pillar of Control. Suspicious, albeit willing to trust Icy, Tritanus agrees to set out with his army and the witches for the pillar. All the while, Icy isn't sure of what's to come, and Darcy and Stormy are clearly concerned for her. The Winx, meanwhile, return to Omnia to inform her of what's happened. But Bloom's major concern is the identity of Politeia, and why Omnia was so cryptic about even sharing her name. Omnia sighs, simply telling them that Politeia was once one of the 9 nymphs who fell as a result of seeking forbidden power. When it's clear Omnia won't share any further, the Winx elect to return to Althea and find the answers for themselves. The episode begins at Althea, deep within the Hall of Enchantments, where Faragonda intends to show the Winx the full story of the fallen nymph Politeia. They enter the Hall of Memories, a chamber specifically built for high-level chronomagic spells. With this, in combination with the power of the Winx's Tracix wings, they will be able to get an in-depth look at Politeia's story, how she came to be a disembodied spirit in league with the Trix, and what exactly her plans with them and Tritanus are. The visions begin with the Vortex of Flames, a pit deep within Domino Castle where past wielders of the Dragon Flame would go to test their powers at its full force without having to worry about causing mass destruction with the power of God. And here now is a young Daphne in her basic fairy form before she even attends Althea. You may be asking, wait, does Daphne wield the dragon flame? And I will admit, we're doing a bit of retconning and mirroring of the lore of different versions of the franchise, but I promise it's gonna be a fun ride. I'm putting this in just in case I don't explain it in the future. You remember how in the 4Kids dub Daphne wielded the dragon flame and then gave it to Bloom before sending her to Earth? We're basically doing that so that Bloom was not born with this power, to add more pain to Daphne's sacrifice. And also I like to imagine it's this idea that, Daphne in Bloom's mind was this perfect wielder of the dragon flame who should have inherited all the power and the throne, but then she was killed to save a little powerless runt like her, and Bloom has a lot of guilt over that. Yeah, I like to torture my characters. Oh wait, they're not even my character. I like to torture characters, whoever they are, whenever I write them, so. But as skilled as Daphne clearly is, she's nervous about attending Althea. As a fairy of the dragon flame and a princess, she doesn't want to receive any special treatment, which compounds her loneliness given that she has, no friends. Or Miriam try to be supportive, but they only wind up exacerbating her anxiety because, they mean well, but they're dumb, and I love them. Then comes her first day at Althea, where Daphne meets her roommate, Politeia. I'm a bit foggy on the details right now, but Politeia winds up being Daphne's lifesaver, helping her break out of her shell and being a bit of a bad, rule-breaking influence. Still, it is a powerful friendship that lasts their whole time at Althea, continuing on to their graduation 3 years later, where we see Politeia is actually engaged to a respected specialist. Things seem to be going well for them, especially later on when Daphne and Politeia, along with 7 other fairies, are named the 9 Nymphs of Light Rock. The Shadow Phoenix's forces, including the Ancestral Witches, have been growing in strength in the last few years, and so the 9 nymphs are charged with defending the magical universe with Daphne as their leader. Things take a sour turn, however, when Politeia's fiancé dies under mysterious circumstances. She begs Daphne to use her powers to save him, as wielders of the dragon flame all possess the healing flame of life. Daphne, however, refuses since he's already dead. It is unknown if the flame could raise a person from the dead, but it is obviously taboo and could have serious ramifications. Not to mention, it's kind of fucked. Politeia, frustrated, shuns her duties as a nymph and goes off searching for another way to bring back her beloved, which leads her to the Ancestral Witches. Good idea, girl. They tell her about Cyrenix, a forbidden transformation which grants its user a reality-altering wish. In exchange for gifting them with Cyrenix, they would help in bringing back her lover. Back then, the Cyrenix source was kept in Light Rock Monastery and under constant guard, which Politeia is able to get past thanks to her status. She grasps the source and takes Cyrenix by force. It's clear something is wrong with her powers, but she's too excited and, after a brief confrontation with Daphne and her fellow nymphs, escapes into the infinite ocean. While she's off in hiding, she uses her power to bring back her fiancé. Things do not go as planned, however, as he can't speak and keeps coughing up water. For the record, they're in a little air bubble, so this should not be happening. He's clearly in terrible pain, but can't die, which is made worse when they realize that he can't stand, choking out that it feels like every step he takes, his feet are being shredded by broken glass. The seas begin to turn dark, just as Daphne, also wielding Cyrenix, finds the both of them. Politeia blames Daphne for all of this, but when she sees the clear pain her lover is in, she relinquishes and undoes the wish, sending him back to the afterlife, but also turning herself into a disembodied spirit, left to wander the living realm for eternity for what she's done. This frustrates her even more, as she was hoping to join her beloved. Of course, she again blames someone else, the Ancestral Witches, and goes off to find them. That confrontation does not end well though, as you might expect, as Politeia isn't able to put up a fight in her current form. But this also means she's not all that useful to the Ancestral Witches. They were hoping she would not have gone as far to undo her wish and become a specter. After all, they killed her lover specifically to string her along into getting them Cyrenix. As such, the witches curse her further, transforming her into a massive water dragon to use as part of their army. Politeia escapes and finds her way to Andros, where after going on a brief rampage, is imprisoned within the Black Shark, where she would remain until Tritanus rise to power in the current day. The Winx snap out of it and are unsure of what to say or how to feel. But before they can even process everything, the room shakes, and Bloom senses a disturbance from the infinite ocean, while Techna's powers briefly surge as she nearly falls over. They head outside, where they find people's phones are shocking them and releasing dangerous amounts of technomagic energy, and storm clouds are rapidly forming. The Pillar of Control, which is directly linked with the magical universe's technomagic and climate, is under attack. We begin at the Pillar of Control, where all seems calm for now. The pillar stands in the center of a massive Branicle. I actually never double-checked how to pronounce that. I'm keeping this in the video because this is on brand. Y'all expect this. Apparently y'all find this amusing. Oh, why is it a YouTube video? Who is texting me? Why is everything happening? Branicle. Okay. A branicle is basically an underwater icicle stretching down from the surface. And of course, since it's the infinite ocean, and everything here is magically terrifying, this branicle is essentially a massive whirlpool of ice flows, giving the pillar an extra layer of natural defenses. But just to ensure its safety, a patrol of Selkies stand outside the branicle, albeit all freezing in the low temperatures and terrified by the vast darkness around them, save for the light of undersea volcanoes all around them. This place is just the stuff of nightmares, but, visually intriguing. Of course, there are horrifying silhouettes in the distance, and you guessed it, it's Tritanus' army. They easily defeat the Selkies and surround the pillar, but they can't get past the branicle. Icy attempts to part it, even trying to use her special Sirenic spell, but she just can't focus. Getting aggravated, Stormy channels her own power and activates her Tempest of Sirenic spell. It creates a massive whirlpool of lightning, which also harnesses the power of the nearby volcanoes, all channeled into breaking through the branicle and heavily damaging the Pillar of Control. This is when we catch up to where we were in the last episode. Because of what's happened, the weather is going crazy all across the magical universe, with anything relying on techno-magic in particular going crazy and attacking anything nearby. And wouldn't you know it, the latter is specifically a problem in Magic City, as well as the planet of techno-magic Zenith. Oratel calls Bloom to double check, and with his suspicions confirmed, he'll be quick to mobilize his alliance to secure their homeworlds and supply assistance to Magix. Techno's worried about Zenith given they were insistent on standing on their own, but right now the Winx need to stop Tritanus before this gets any worse. And so while Techna goes to Zenith to protect her world and try to get through to King Cryos, the other Winx head to stop Tritanus. And since both regions are freezing cold, they'll need to use a special variant of Sirenics. Yes, we are integrating Crystal Sirenics into this rewrite. Just imagine with me the glory that would be the Harmonix designs, but winterified. We're making it a thing. Deal with it. It's gonna be a thing. We're doing it for the aesthetics, children. Always do it for the aesthetics. Thankfully, the pillar's seal is being a real bitch, as it is literally frozen so deeply it's essentially just part of the pillar's foundation. Tritanus supposes that they'll have to destroy the whole pillar in this case, but thankfully the Winx arrive just in time to fight and stall him. Techna meanwhile finds Zenith in utter chaos. The capital city's climate is calibrated to remain cold enough for the techno-droids to operate efficiently. However, this has come to bite them in the ass as a massive ice storm forms over the city, expanding quickly while the techno-droids attack civilians. We see a few guardian fairies here to help, but all of their powers are on the fritz given, their powers rely on techno-magic. Techna decides to head for the palace and destroy the power source for the city's techno-magic grid, figuring that should be enough to stop the chaos. We can rebuild it after we've avoided Zenith being frozen solid and wasted by its own robots. King Cryos gets the same idea actually, much to the chagrin of Techna's parents. They rush to the source where Techna arrives shortly thereafter to save them. Techna tries to destroy the grid only for a surge of power to knock her back. Her parents demand that she stop, but Techna gets an idea. Magnethia realizes what she plans on doing and yells at her, which quickly devolves into pleading. Both she and Electronio begin sobbing, saying they can't bear to risk losing her again. Techna apologizes, saying that she's doing this for them, as well as everyone else, and she leaps into the core. She cries out in pain as the power surges around her, consuming her and seemingly destroying her. She flashes back to the terror of falling into the Omega portal, being lost and alone in the darkness, then trying to survive on Omega, realizing everyone probably assumed she's dead and gave up on her. But then she remembers how Timmy managed to reach her, and how her friends came to save her. Refusing to give up on herself or her loved ones, Tecna invokes her special Sirenic spell, the Aura of Sirenix. Another surge of power rips across Zenith, dispelling the ice storm, turning on the city's heating grid, and disabling all of the techno-droids. Tecna has successfully used her Sirenix powers to stop the mayhem on Zenith, and create a new techno-magic core. And right on time, forces from the Alliance arrive to help clean up the mess, including King Oratel and Queen Miriam. Tecna hugs her parents tight, and they apologize for all they've said and done. Inspired by the sight, King Cryos agrees to join the Alliance. Back in the Infinite Ocean, the Winx try to get through to Tritanus that he's just being used, but he refuses to listen, and the Tricks are quick to shut them up. Infuriated, Tritanus moves to destroy the pillar as he said, and desperate, thinking back to how they've managed to restore the other pillars, Bloom uses her powers to destroy the seal before Tritanus can take it. Of course, everyone's in shock, and Politeia reveals herself, saying she was so close to seizing the power of the throne, if only it wasn't for those pathetic fairies. Politeia's presence immediately confirms what the Winx have said to Tritanus. Icy's in shock and tries to explain, but Tritanus, infuriated more than ever before and cursing himself for falling for Icy's lies yet again, moves to kill her. Darcy and Stormy defend her, and the Tricks, along with Politeia, escape. Tritanus, meanwhile, simply floats there, unsure of what to even think. Quietly, he simply calls his forces together and leaves without even acknowledging the Winx. The Winx are obviously disturbed, but right now they need to focus on restoring the pillar, though Aisha does take the moment to free Queen Ligeia from Tritanus' influence. Tecna arrives just in the nick of time, and with her Aura of Sirenix, creates a brand new seal for the Pillar of Control, one of pure energy that Tritanus will never be able to steal. This also restores the Brinnacle around the pillar. The worlds are again saved and ready to work together to stop Tritanus. However, given Tritanus is short one seal and he can't take the new ones the Winx have created, he has no real way of activating the Emperor's throne. The Alliance can essentially rest easy knowing the magical universe is safe, and the Winx can attack Tritanus and capture him whenever they decide. Ideally, they would like to focus on finding the Breath of the Ocean first, so as to free the mutants from Tritanus' spell, but for now they feel that they can finally rest. Of course, Sky is elated to hear the news. The Winx are about to perform a concert in Magic City to celebrate, and right before the girls go on, Sky actually proposes to Bloom. The moment is surrounded by everyone recording, though the other Winx and even the specialists aren't sure how to react. Too distracted to think her answer through, Bloom simply says yes, and the two kiss. What follows is an applause while the Winx and specialists hesitantly clap while glancing at each other, and Venomia, who's here because of course she is, simply rolls her eyes. The episode ends with the Winx performing the Magic of Tonight, but as the song plays, we see Tritanus sitting alone atop the Emperor's throne, appearing sullen and just staring off into the distance. We then switch to the Tricks, who are hiding out near the coral barrier. Icy is visibly depressed while Darcy and Stormy aren't sure of what to do or what to say to her. Politeia, meanwhile, is glimpsing into the Eye of Inspiration, where she sees a vision of an unconscious, injured Sky, Bloom unleashing her Sirenix powers at full force, and an activated Emperor's throne, and she laughs to herself. Beginning our 4-part finale extravaganza of Terra and Trauma, trademarking that, we start with Daphne in Lake Roccaluce using her magic to watch Bloom and Sky's engagement. She's concerned for her sister, but wants her to be happy, wishing she could be there for the ceremony to support Bloom. Of course, Politeia interrupts the moment, greeting her old friend with Stormy's iconic line,
Who lives under a lake?
"Look, it's gold, okay? We gotta get it in here somewhere." Daphne's always ready to fight back, but as she attempts to banish Politeia uses a small spark of dark Sirenix power, which she received from the Tricks, to activate her special Sirenix spell. So many S's. The Spite of Sirenix. This allows Politeia to absorb Daphne's power and even her essence as a spirit, and empower herself with it. You remember how Valtor talked about using an absorption spell to imprison Oratel and Miriam within himself? Yeah, this is basically that, except real, because Politeia don't play games. Now Politeia possesses Dark Sirenics as well as Daphne's powers, and her plan can commence. Her next stop? Bloom and Sky's wedding. Speaking of which, Bloom wakes up in her tower a la the beginning of magical adventure, ready to start the day. Except instead of her weird servants rushing in to get her ready, we have Stella rushing in to get Bloom dressed. She's been helping set up the event and she is stressed. Especially given, weddings can take over a year to get together, but this one only had 2 months. All these fucking messes. Yes, it has been about 2 months since the last episode. Tritanus is not considered a threat since he can't activate the throne, and with all the kingdoms united, any attack he would try to launch through the ocean gates would instantly be crushed thanks to Zenith's assistance. Politeia and the Tricks, meanwhile, have been on the run since the incident at the Pillar of Control and remain completely silent. The Selkies, meanwhile, are patrolling all across the Infinite Ocean for any disturbances, and right now, all is chill. This leaves the Winx time to rest, and by rest, I mean bust their asses and nearly lose their minds trying to set up a wedding at the Royal Palace of Domino, arranging the festivities, and trying to get the guest list together across so many different worlds. And so many side characters. Flora is handling decorations, Musa is in charge of the entertainment, and Tecna is overseeing accommodations, seating, the guest list, all the boring stuff. Which she doesn't mind because, she actually finds organization fun, although she is losing a bit of her mind as well. She just won't admit it. Roxy has been busy focusing on her schoolwork back at Althea, while Aisha has been taking the time to be with her family now that Ligeia has been saved. Bloom's still tepid about the wedding, but she's genuinely excited about it. Sky actually wanted them to get married on the first day of spring when he first attempted to set a date for the wedding at the start of the season, and Bloom suggested that impulsively, and they both just kind of went along with it anxiously, much to Stella's ire that she refuses to admit to because she just wants Bloom to be happy. While going through her prep, Tecna hands Bloom a letter from Diospro, but Bloom, unsure of what to think, simply stuffs the letter into her pocket. Oh, I'll read it later. And then later never comes. Sky, meanwhile, is also stressed as fuck at his bachelor party with the specialists. They're currently out dragon riding because that's what dudes do. Sky is doing a terrible job at hiding his stress, which Riven is quick to call him out on. And here we are actually given a nice moment where the guys talk about what they've all been going through, since the Winx have been busier than usual with a little time to spend with their boyfriends. Sky affirms that he does love Bloom and he wants her to be happy, and though the other guys still aren't sure this is the best idea, they decide to support Sky regardless. Aisha, meanwhile, isn't actually on Andros, she's actually on Tir Nanog, visiting Naboo. I mentioned this at the start of the video, but I'm gonna mention this again, just in case. Naboo is not dead. He's in a coma, though while everyone is pretty sure he'll never wake up again, he's still technically alive and being kept in stasis by the magic of the terrestrial fairies. Aisha has been visiting him in secret from time to time just to talk to him, even if he can't talk back. She admits she envies Bloom a lot. Aisha had always been a loner who hated the idea of being in love, yet when she got to know Naboo, and after she stopped wanting to punch him constantly, she completely changed and opened up. She was so excited to get married and spend their lives together no matter what world they lived on. She's happy Bloom will finally get that with Sky, but Aisha wishes that Naboo could still be here with her. Afterwards, she calls Tressa to check in. Ligeia is still recovering and can barely speak. She'll be okay, but they don't know when she'll be able to tell them about the Breath of the Ocean. This concerns Aisha as they need to get that stone to free Tritanus' army all at once. Though Tritanus is essentially powerless and cornered right now, that's precisely why she's concerned. Venomia, of course, is giving a story about the wedding and providing her slanderous commentary of Bloom, Sky, and the Winx, and Bloom can't help but listen. When Stella catches this, she snatches Bloom's phone and gets her to continue helping with wedding prep. Roxy has arrived to help, though when she makes a comment about Venomia having a point about the wedding being really impulsive, Bloom gets upset and walks off. Stella goes after her, and we get a nice moment between the OG best friends. Bloom is honest that she's not sure if she made the right choice, that she knows this Sky is not who she fell for all those years ago, but she does know that she loves this Sky too, and she's afraid that if she waits another day, something else might happen to them, and she might lose him for good this time. Stella empathizes, promising that she's gonna make sure that this wedding goes off without a hitch. Of course, as the ceremony starts to warm up and the guests begin arriving, cue all the cameos from old fan favorites, we see the Tricks arrive and disguising themselves as servants. Icy in particular seems especially bitter towards Bloom, but for now they're biding their time. All the Winx, save for Bloom and Stella, are out here mingling. Tekna, Musa, and Flora are just enjoying downtime with their boyfriends, while Roxy and Aisha chill together talking shit about them all. Roxy asks Aisha how she's been doing, and Aisha's honest that she's not great, and isn't sure how everyone can be so calm while Tritanus is still out there. She notices, though, that Roxy is stressed, and Roxy admits that she fucked up and upset Bloom before. Aisha relates, saying that she knows what it's like to feel like the outsider in a group of friends. To move on to a lighter note, Aisha actually gets them to start scoping out the place for cute guys, showing that she is warming up to the idea of moving on from Naboo. And also to maybe set up Roxy to be a potential LGBT icon. Mayhaps. Of course, when Roy waves to Aisha, both Aisha and Roxy have lukewarm reactions like, oh god, that one. Roy does try striking up a conversation, but it doesn't go anywhere, and Aisha simply walks off saying that she needs time to talk to her parents alone. Roy then tries to talk to Roxy, but Roxy ain't having any of it, and she got nothing to lose, so she just pieces out. Bloom is, of course, getting super stressed as Stella helps get her ready. Oratel, Miriam, Mike, and Vanessa are all here to see her off, and both Oratel and Mike will be bringing Bloom down the aisle. Cue a really tender moment where the whole family gets a tearful group hug, including Kiko. Stella simply bawls her eyes out, then apparently Stella's flying over my house right now to make sure I'm not ruining the wedding's PR. Stella simply bawls her eyes out, then rushes everyone out when they mess up Bloom's hair. Sky, though, is even more stressed, pacing back and forth in the palace, wishing he could talk to Bloom to keep himself calm, yet also not sure if he can handle facing Bloom out there in front of the whole crowd. And so he decides to head outside and get some air. One of the servants asks if he's sure, and he insists he needs to be alone for a while. Of course, right on time, Stella's here to ask where Sky is, and this servant lies and says she wasn't aware Sky left at all. And Stella freaks out and, having 15 panic attacks at once, rushes to begin the manhunt. And this servant smirks. Drama! The whispers begin amongst the crowd, and Bloom, having heard of what's happened from Stella via text, and watching the people from her tower, stresses out even more, and even starts crying. And right as the misery peaks, Venomia announces herself and is snarky as hell. Bloom is unnerved on how Venomia even got in here, but more than that, she doesn't understand why Venomia has been so cruel towards her and the Winx from day one. While this back and forth is going on, we also cut to Sky out in the gardens, where we saw Arendor make his deal with the ancestral witches in Magical Adventure. The same servant from earlier approaches Sky along with her sisters, and when they reveal themselves as the Tricks, they strike, inadvertently shaking the earth with their powers and catching everyone's attention. The guests try to escape, but of course a shadowy cage falls over the guest area, trapping them and most of the Winx inside. A fight commences where everyone rushes to see what's happening, all while Sky, without a weapon, tries to escape the hedge maze and avoid capture by the Tricks. The Winx and Specialists arrive in time, but when Icy sees Bloom coming to Sky's defense and hugging him, Icy's fury boils over and she unleashes her special Sirenic spell, the Blizzard of Sirenics. As the name would imply, a massive blizzard forms over the castle, freezing everything, very similar to the Ancestral Witch's spell which had frozen Domino back before the series began. The Tricks take advantage of the chaos to capture Sky, and Palatea reveals herself as their ringleader. She holds up the Eye of Inspiration, giving Bloom a glimpse of the prophecy she had seen. According to the Eye, the Emperor's throne can only be activated by the will of a sovereign. Normally, that would have meant seizing all 3 seals from the Pillars of the Infinite Ocean, but as it turns out, Sky's life force as a young king is more than enough. Before the Winx can even fully process what she means, Palatea says that she's certain Tritanus will appreciate the gift before she and the Tricks escape into the Infinite Ocean with Sky. The episode begins in the Infinite Ocean, with Tritanus hunting fish as he did in the first episode, but rather than do this for sport, he's instead doing this to eat, as he's remained alone at the Emperor's throne this whole time, without any motivation to do anything but eat to stay alive, and ruminate on his failures and Icy's betrayal. It's not been a fun time. Sad montage! Of course, right on cue, Icy arrives with an unconscious Sky. Tritanus forces immediately surround her, and Tritanus asks why he shouldn't just kill her right on the spot. Icy tells Tritanus that in place of the final seal, he can use the life force of a young sovereign to activate the throne. She believes it's the least she could do for him after everything she's done. Bitterly, Tritanus accepts and orders Icy to stay to help set up the ritual under close supervision. Also, so that way if it fails and it turns out she's lying, it will be easy to, kill her. The other Trix and Politeia, meanwhile, are watching from afar. Darcy and Stormy are ready to jump in at any moment to defend their sister should Tritanus lash out, but Politeia is too busy looking forward to achieving ultimate power through her newest scheme, because she's shady. On Andros, meanwhile, the kingdoms are beginning to mobilize to save Sky from Tritanus, and stop Tritanus once and for all. All the armies will surround the ocean gates, ensuring he won't be able to escape, and the plan is to lay siege to the Emperor's throne. Bloom, Aisha, and Roxy will be assisting with this siege, while the other Winx will be searching for the breath of the ocean. Bloom is, of course, stressed given Sky's in mortal danger, but is determined to save him more than anything else. Thanks to Ligeia's knowledge, they learn that the breath of the ocean is a mysterious stone that holds the power to purify anything of darkness and wild magic. The legends say that the stone was created from a clash between the great dragon and the Leviathan, and as such, holds both powers in perfect balance. Omnia should be able to help them locate it, assuming that she can actually tell them. I don't know, when you're a weird ethereal being, apparently there are just like a bunch of taboos and rules about what you can tell the main characters. And yeah, we're using that to our advantage here. I'm doing this to give you a riveting story! So while the siege on the throne begins, the other Winx head for Omnia's domain, though she's been forbidden to explicitly reveal the stone's location. There we go! Only speaking in riddles and stories, much to Stella's annoyance. Flora kinda gets an idea, but lets Tecna take the wheel as she analyzes Omnia's keywords. These clues point them to Geyser Gorge back on Domino, the place we never got to fully explore back in the first half of the season. A battle ensues at the throne between the Winx, Aisha's family, and the armies of the magical universe against Tritanus' massive army of mutants. It gets intense as the mutants are making it impossible to actually reach the throne, and when it looks like they are outnumbered, Roxy uses her special Sirenic spell. Oh god, it's so difficult to say that so many times. The Call of Sirenics. And, basically becoming Aquaman, she uses her animal powers to summon an army of sea creatures throughout the infinite ocean to help them break through, including the singing whales and even the Devourer. Tritanus, though, is not at all perturbed, continuing to let Icy guide him through setting up the ritual. Sky is now trapped in a sphere in the legs of the Emperor's throne, still unconscious. This gives them a chance to talk about why Icy did what she did, and why she's helping Tritanus now. Icy admits there are things about her past she's been hoping to forget, and that she's been trying to keep away from Tritanus. She has one request for Tritanus once he becomes Emperor, and once that's done, he can kill her if he really wants. Cue foreshadowing Icy's Diamond backstory. While this is going down, the Winx arrive at Geyser Gorge. Tecna has done more research on the area, and since this is where the Great Dragon's resentment for the Leviathan is said to manifest, they plan on exploring as much of the area as they can this time around. Flora uses her powers to scan the area and senses something deeper within. After navigating the treacherous, inextinguishable yellow flames, they come across a hidden reef of golden coral, which Flora, thanks to her ability to communicate with the coral, reveals is called the Yellow Reef. Heading deeper within, Flora begins to piece together the story of the reef and the true battle between the Great Dragon and Leviathan, and urges the other Winx to use their Tracix wings to witness the creation of the breath of the ocean. All while we cut back to the other Winx cutting through Tritanus' army and reaching the throne. That's when Flora realizes, however, that the breath of the ocean is not something that's just kept around for use. It must be forged through a clash between the dragon flame and the power of the Leviathan. The Serpent's Tears, which is found in the Emperor's throne. Tritanus taunts Bloom over not being able to save Sky, and her anger results in the use of her Inferno of Sirenic spell. A massive wave of fire engulfs the throne, which seemingly should be able to destroy it and free Sky from his prison. Instead, the throne lights up, and as the flames part, a strange stone takes form, the breath of the ocean. This is exactly what Tritanus was planning on. Sky was merely a decoy to lure Bloom so that her dragon flame, the will of the great dragon as a sovereign, could be used to forge the breath of the ocean, thus powering the Emperor's throne. The throne is at long last activated, and as Tritanus takes his seat, all the power of both the dragon flame and the Serpent's Tears flows into him. He is now the Emperor of the Infinite Ocean, and soon will become the ruler of the magical universe. With Tritanus as the Emperor, Darcy and Stormy panic as to what he's gonna do next. Politeia seems perfectly calm though. She has apparently ordered a plane and is about to kill me. Get out of the sky! I'm recording. She has planned on all of this and is keen to let Tritanus wipe out the forces of the magical universe before she proceeds to phase 2. Darcy and Stormy ask about Icy, and Politeia simply says if they're so worried for their sister, they should have been by her side the whole time, because, you know, she's a bitch. Flora's group, meanwhile, checks in with Omnia, as they felt the power surge from the Emperor's throne, and they rush to help the other Winx. Tritanus, as Emperor of the Infinite Ocean, wields absolute power, even over all the creatures Roxy used her powers to summon. Cue Roxy being bitter as fuck. The tides have turned against the magical universe's alliance. Oh, is that a pun? Oh no! Ligeia steps in and speaks to Tritanus directly. She apologizes for not making it clear how much she loved him, but she does not pity the choices he's made. Tritanus could have lived a wonderful, happy life had he accepted he wasn't fit to be a leader, and his selfishness and cruelty is exactly why he would never have been worthy of the throne, even if Tressa and Nerea somehow weren't. And now Ligeia is making it her duty to stop Tritanus from hurting anyone else, even if it means cutting him down. We get a full-on family brawl against Tritanus, all while Roxy gets Sky out of the throne and tries to protect him and Bloom, with Bloom and Shockin trying to heal Sky. The other Winx finally arrive and assist in the battle, though it's clear that it's an uphill battle. Tapping into her powers and her desire to protect everyone, Flora uses the Elixir of Sirenix, a stand-in for the Breath of the Ocean's purifying powers, which manages to free the unmutated sea creatures from Tritanus' control, and even some of the mutants. Tritanus, however, resists, and Flora struggles to continue the healing. Aisha steps in and uses her own spell, the Maelstrom of Sirenix, which allows her to manipulate the Infinite Ocean's currents to toss Tritanus and his army about, allowing Flora to free most of his army. Tritanus becomes even more furious, but before he can do anything else, Politeia arrives and uses her Spite of Sirenix on him. This allows her to rip the power of the Breath of the Ocean away from him and take it for herself, assuming her physical form once again. Icy rushes to the now unconscious, weakened Tritanus side, and she, along with Darcy and Stormy, try to protect themselves until the Winx save them. Bloom is terrified of what's happened, but then hears Daphne's voice. It's here that she learns Politeia absorbed Daphne's powers, but Daphne is managing to call out to Bloom even now, telling her to do what she could never manage: put Politeia to rest. Bloom vows that she will, and donning Daphne's mask, she joins the fight. Here we get a full-on battle between Bloom and Politeia, by which I mean Bloom shows off her powers like she did back in the Season 1 finale. Politeia has the slight edge with the Breath of the Ocean, but it's clear Bloom isn't going down without a fight. The other Winx join in a massive convergence spell, and together, they manage to pin Politeia down, giving Bloom enough time to go in and tell her, "Your pain is no excuse for what you have done." Bloom, harnessing her full strength, absorbs the power of the flame from Politeia, allowing the Serpent's tears to disperse throughout the Infinite Ocean. Politeia again becomes a specter, but Bloom uses her powers to allow Politeia to finally pass into the afterlife, saying she simply hopes Politeia finds rest. This also frees Daphne, who, exhausted, returns to Lake Roccaluce before hugging Bloom. All seems well, with all of the mutants now uncorrupted, and a defeated Tritanus now being captured and taken into custody. The Tricks, however, have escaped, and Sky is still unconscious. Before she can go to him, though, Bloom feels something calling her into the abyss of the Infinite Ocean. There's something else she must do before all is made well, and the other Winx agree to go with her. And so, transforming into Crystal Sirenix to light their way, they descend into the abyss. The abyss of the Infinite Ocean is a terrifying place. It's pitch black and freezing, with Crystal Sirenix being the only thing lighting the Winx's way. They're all unnerved, but follow Bloom as she follows whatever is calling her. Though we can have some horrifying humor as Stella is terrified by whatever deep-sea creatures decide to pop out and scare her. They make their way further, then stop as a deafening bellow surrounds them. Several glowing eyes appear before them, and though the other Winx prepare to fight, Bloom stops them. She displays her dragon flame and reveals that this creature, completely hidden by the shadows, must be the Leviathan. Bloom has a telepathic link with this creature through her dragon flame, hence why she was able to hear it calling out to her. And now she's learned that the Leviathan wants all dwellers of the magical universe to return there and never return to the Infinite Ocean again. They must also return Cyrenix, but as a thank you for protecting its realm, the Leviathan will give Bloom one rule-free, reality-altering wish that will not be subjected to the Cyrenix curse. After this, the Cyrenix source will be returned to the Infinite Ocean, and any remnants of the Cyrenix curse will be eradicated. The Winx discuss among themselves and tell Bloom to use her wish to save Sky, or even to restore his memories. Bloom gives a pause and then surprises them all by asking the Leviathan to reawaken another friend of theirs, one who was nearly taken before his time, a sorcerer by the name of Naboo. Everyone is in shock, especially Aisha, but before they can react, the Leviathan grants their wish, and the Winx, along with all the people of the magical universe, are returned to Andros. And they see that they've lost Cyrenix. We also cut to the Tricks, who are currently on the run, losing Dark Cyrenix as well. Darcy and Stormy are bitter, but Icy is glad that power is gone. Though her sisters now ask what they should do with no direction, Icy says there's something she needs her sisters to know. Their next stop will be the forbidden planet of Diamond. We cut to Tir Nan Og, where all the Winx except Bloom rush to check on Naboo. Nebula is in tears, and we see that Naboo is being tended to by the terrestrial fairies as he's unexpectedly awakened. We get a tearful reunion as Aisha holds Naboo close, and Naboo teases her that she broke her promise about never crying again. On Andros, meanwhile, Sky has finally awakened and is fully healed. He's still amnesiac, but now they can have an honest conversation about everything. They agree that while they had fun getting to know each other again, they rushed into a marriage too quickly, and now they're not sure that they can make each other truly happy. Especially since Bloom is projecting her old Sky onto the new Sky, and Sky is just bending over backwards trying to make Bloom happy to his own detriment. As much as it hurts, they agree that they can't make each other happy, and they should end things for good this time. They're still friends, but they're gonna need a long time apart to fully process and accept what's happened. That night, everyone has a nice dinner together to celebrate Tritanus' defeat, as well as Naboo's reawakening. Tritanus is still severely weakened, but is now at Light Rock Monastery for rehabilitation. Bloom hears Daphne again and goes off on her own, where she then sees Oratel, Miriam, Mike, and Vanessa have all gathered as well, hearing the voice. Daphne appears before them. With the Cyrenix source now gone, her duty is over, and she's now free to finally enter the afterlife. Everyone cries as they say goodbye to Daphne, and as Daphne fades, her mask also fades from Bloom's hands as her powers dissipate. Bloom will miss her sister dearly, but she hopes Daphne can rest well after all she's been through. Cue tearful family hug. But because Daphne's powers have faded, that also means there's a bit of a security issue at the Museum of Magic and Magic City. There's a vault that was protected by the powers of the 9 nymphs, but with Daphne's powers gone, Venomia manages to slip inside rather easily, displaying snake-themed powers to get past the guards, even shape-shifting at points to ensure she's not caught. Inside the vault, she comes across a book which she calls the Legendarium. She swipes the tome and escapes the museum, and once she's sure she's safe, she opens the book to the image of a sorcerer whose voice projects itself, saying, "It's about time, Selena." Venomia shapeshifts yet again into a green-haired girl who says, "Sorry for the wait, Acheron, but now the real fun can begin." Selena closes the book and looks off into the night sky as it starts to rain and thunder, vowing to make Bloom pay. So, there you go. I hope you all enjoyed the second half of my grandest fanfiction. It took a long time, but I really hope it was worth the wait and that you guys enjoyed it. Will I rewrite Season 6? Probably, but to be honest, that one's outline is nowhere near as solid as Season 5's, so I would not expect one till the end of this year, at the earliest. Anyways, thank you again for just sticking through this wild ride. And if you would like to see more content like this from me, then be sure to subscribe and ring that bell for notifications of my new videos, because YouTube hates creators. And if you would like to support what I do, please also consider, if you're willing and able, pledging your support over on Patreon. Especially because from now on, all patrons, including those pledging just $1 a month, will have access to the new and improved Union of War Discord server. I'm the Unicorn of War, and oh god, oh no, the comments are gonna be asking when my season 6 rewrite is gonna be out. Oh no, what have I done?